The 1st of August 2020 marked the beginning of a new era in New Zealand's racing industry, with TAB New Zealand coming into existence. The new organisation replaced the Racing Industry Transition Agency, the successor body to the New Zealand Racing Board that was established to manage the transition to a new governance model. The business now has a clear responsibility for ensuring that it maximises profits for the long-term benefit of the racing industry and returns to New Zealand sports. At the same time, these objectives are subject to TAB New Zealand ensuring that risks of problem and underage gambling are minimised. Last year couldn't have been more challenging for the TAB, with COVID-19 hitting the business hard, with significant impacts to domestic racing and the loss of the majority of domestic racing and domestic and international sport.
The impact of COVID-19 on the business most definitely can't be understated. Without the $20 million in annual operating costs taken out of the TAB's business, the additional income generated from the passing of the Racing Industry Act through the additional betting levy and betting information use charge income that the industry now receives, and obviously also the critical industry support package received from government. Without those things, we wouldn't have been able to retain income for the industry at their budgeted 19-20 levels.
Following on from an initial hit of COVID-19, the TAB has delivered a strong first quarter and is ahead of budget against the same period last year.
So what has helped the first quarter performance is the addition of some new products to the market, and something we've been focusing on continuing to do over the next fiscal year. And those products were the Same Game Multi and Winsurance products, so they've proved popular and have certainly added to the growth that the business has experienced. We have built a solid foundation out of this first quarter, and we're certainly heading in the right direction. However, obviously, given the current economic and social environment at the moment, we just need to be very cautious about the future, naturally. But certainly that first quarter is giving us some comfort that we're heading in the right direction.
Performance has been really consistent. So profit year to date for the first quarter is $43.5 million. So that was $11.4 million ahead of budget and $9.9 million ahead of last year. This is made up of betting reported profit, which was $40.1 million. That was $11.8 million up against budget. Gaming reported profit was $5.1 million. This was $0.5 million below budget, and this was largely due to the enforced closures of gaming sites during the Auckland lockdown. RIU was negative $1.6 million, which was $0.1 million favourable to budget. Turnover for the quarter was $653 million against a budget of $555 million. We paid out $548 million in dividends. Gross betting revenue was $104 million against a budget of $86 million. So operating expenses were $29 million for the quarter, which is about $0.7 million below budget and $7.2 million below last year. Net betting revenue was $78.4 million against budget of $65.2 million.
There are various aspects that have contributed to the positive results.
We've seen really strong starter numbers. So thoroughbred starter numbers are up about 19%. We've seen harness starter numbers up about 25%. And also field sizes. So thoroughbred field sizes are up from 9.8 to 12.3 this year. So all of that has led to domestic racing turnover being up 19%.
This quarter covers August to October when racing was back up and running. But there have been some trends that have emerged in racing that are positive for everyone.
So we've seen some really interesting things from our customers. Over lockdown, they bet a lot more on overseas racing when there was no domestic racing, and we've seen them continue to bet on overseas racing while their domestic racing turnover has returned to its prior levels. So what we've seen this year, the Victoria Derby, the Cox Plate, the Caulfield Cup, were all up on turnover by about 200 to 300k. So really good activity on those races.
The abundance of quality sport over the period has also had a positive impact on betting. The All Blacks made their first international appearance since the 2019 Rugby World Cup in October, with Games 1 and 2 generating turnover of $1.1 million and Game 3 generating $980,000. This is in line with expected turnover for a Bledisloe All Blacks match. The Nrl Grand Final was also held in October, with the match between the Panthers and the Storm having the highest turnover of any Grand Final from the past 5 years by $250,000. These good results for the TAB have translated into a good result for the racing industry.
So the board at its November meeting reviewed the distribution to the industry for the first quarter of the year, and certainly when it was set at $31.6 million, given the circumstances, we were cautiously optimistic that we could achieve that amount, but certainly the pleasing results that we've experienced in the first quarter has ensured that we've been able to actually distribute 33.8 million. And that's been obviously a combination of betting profit, which was paid at the budgeted amounts, and certainly the uplift is coming from the betting levy and the betting information use charges, which obviously came out of the passing of the Racing Industry Act at the end of June.
Looking forward, TAB New Zealand will be hoping the trends experienced during the first quarter continue through the important, busy second quarter of the year, and that the reform program is completed. At the same time, the business is on track to have a new chief executive in place.
The foundation's definitely now in place from the reform program enacted by and under the Right Honourable Winston Peters. So the ball's in the industry's court now, and they have every opportunity to seal the deal and make it happen.
Earlier this month, Grant Robertson was appointed the new racing minister. He worked closely with Winston Peters on the reform program.
Most definitely looking forward to working with the new minister. We've got one or two things to tidy up from the reform program we've undertaken over the last couple of years. You know, we have obviously the appointment of the new TAB board to tidy up. We've got a number of regulation streams that come out of the two pieces of legislation, and including in that the establishment of the Racing Integrity Board, which is obviously on the agenda for the next fiscal year. So we were lucky enough to get some time with the minister very shortly after his appointment on a day that they host the Melbourne Cup, obviously a very important day for us all. And certainly that was a great opportunity for us to get on the front foot with him early in his tenure and work through his Melbourne Cup bets, which unfortunately I don't think were overly successful, but it was certainly great to get off on the right foot and engage with the minister early in an area I know that he's passionate about and will be of enormous benefit for us working with going forward.
The results for the second quarter are going to be crucial, with some of the TAB's biggest race days and our spring and summer marketing campaigns underway.
So although we do need to be cautious about the present situation, obviously with the social and economic environment that we're operating in, but I think given the progression that we're on, the pathway that we're on, I think we can start to feel some cautious optimism starting to sneak in, and you know I'm confident that we've turned the corner and are heading in the right direction.
At the same time as releasing its quarterly results, the annual results for the Racing Industry Transition Agency were released for the year up to July the 31st. Not surprisingly, they were heavily impacted by the pandemic. In total, $152.3 million was distributed or paid to racing and sport. This included $137.6 million to the codes, clubs and integrity bodies. A further $14.7 million was returned to the sporting community over the course of the year. Turnover for the year was $2.6 billion against $2.7 billion last year. Net profit for the year was $28 million, while total expenses were $207 million against $211 million last year.
It was really a game of two halves the last financial year, to be honest. I think we hit, you know, our 6 month numbers not too far away from budget, obviously, but then the whole world changed, and when COVID hit, and you know, we started to really get some impact of COVID even as early as half year, with the odd sporting fixture starting to be cancelled and postponed and whatnot. But obviously once the NBA called off their season in early March, what happened after that's well known to everyone, and the second half of the year was vastly different than the first.
Which makes what was achieved following the COVID-19 lockdown such a big accomplishment.
I think it's quite remarkable, the legislative program that the last government was able to put through, even with the volume of work involved in that. But when you throw COVID in on top and the challenges that you know brought to the table, it is quite astounding that we were still able to get that second piece of legislation, in particular the Racing Industry Act, through in June, when obviously government wasn't even meeting in its normal format through that period. So I think for the whole team, and that includes obviously the codes, the wider industry, the select committee obviously, and the good folks at DIA who were the backbone to the process, not to mention the Minister's office. You throw all that together and actually when you sit back and actually realise that we're able to get all that through in that period of time with the challenges that we had, I think it's quite an extraordinary achievement, to be honest.